from scratch.
I'd go with nuclear over fracking too, if it were between those two, but that's just me.
Nuclear, robots. Isaac, I love your universal childcare one. That might be a good LD topic too.
Ooh, yeah, that is a good one.
Healthcare or childcare.
I like that we have so many ideas.
Yeah. And okay, well, I've saved the chat history. The PowerPoint that I quickly went through will be available online later. Thanks for all your help and collaboration. I'll see you in the other room if I see you. Otherwise.
And the other room is middle school?
The other one is
right?
Yes, going back to room 1 for middle school.
Okay, so I don't need to be there. Alrighty.
And what will room 2 be?
Right. Hi guys. I know Interps going to be coming in here and continuing advanced or continuing middle school in the other one as much as you'd like. Awesome. I love seeing everyone. This is so cool. Yay.
What's this one going to be?
I'm getting tired though already. I don't know about you guys. I'm already tired. Give a couple minutes for everyone. Welcome to everyone. So excited to see you all. Here's hoping Jennifer will help me out today. She's an Interp goddess, I'm just going to say. All right. Robin, in here will be Interps, talking about Interps, techniques, cutting, things like that. The other room, or you can take a break if you don't want to deal with this. That's okay. Either way, it's up to you.
And what will the other room be?
You have to listen to me for a little while longer. Ha ha ha. Everyone's so sick of hearing me from me by the end of the day.
And what will the other room be?
Usually when we're in person, I like assign everyone out to rooms and I try to avoid being in them, just sitting and talking out in the halls and setting up food and give everyone else a chance to teach.
Isaac, the other room is advanced middle school.
What's after this?
Kimberly, what is your school?
Getting a few people coming in. I'll give it another minute or two. We will be talking about Interps in this room, and Zoom 1 will be middle schools, just FYI. If you missed our announcement that we switched rooms, I'm recording the things on this room. Yes, my son. Where are those all the time? So my goofy son, he used to do speech and debate in theaters in my room, putting on silly glasses and showing off to his girlfriend. So if I'm laughing, it's because I'm being entertained right now. All right, everyone. I value your time, so I like to start on time as much as possible. If people come in, that's perfectly fine. We've got it so people can just come in and out without being approved. It's working nicely. So you've heard a lot from me. I'm sorry. So we're going to talk about Interps because this was requested. All of the things that we're saying today were requested by coaches as things to cover. And then there was, of course, the online stuff that we talked about that we felt was necessary. If there is something we have not covered, there was LD and things like that from last year. You can go and watch those or meet up with me or email me, and we are happy to Zoom. I'm sure I can find some other experts that are good at this and get them to Zoom with you and have some individual time at going through things, and we'd be happy to help you in any way we can. If you're in the chats, let me see if I can keep it up. So that, okay, cool. All right. So Interps, if you've done Interps before, please chime in with your best thoughts and ideas that you have, or things that have worked for you, or ask me questions about more advanced things that you want to know about, and I'll be happy to address those as they're going as well. So Interps, what, how, and why. Just going to go through these with that. So the Interps are dramatic interp. Dramatic interpretation is not that it has to be depressing. You don't have to want to kill yourself afterwards. It just needs to be more serious in nature. And often what you'll find is it's usually one narrator point of view with a couple of other voices in. It's not the multiple voices that's often done in a humorous. So dramatic tends to be more narrative of a story of an individual. But I have seen it with multiple characters, just tends to be less. And again, it can have funny moments in it. In fact, a good balance of humor within dramatic is very beneficial, because if you just got them dark and serious the entire time, that can also be detrimental. And you want levels of things to keep your audience engaged. Humorous interpretation, again, can have serious moments, but is overall funny and light. It doesn't have to be laugh out loud, fall down hilarious, but it doesn't, it's lighter in nature. It's more entertaining, things like that. So it's gonna be that. Duo interp can be both. And I'm sorry, my daughter's texting me here. Duo interp is 2 people. And here's the thing, usually they're choreographed around each other and they're playing multiple parts each as well. It can be serious, it can be funny. Again, a good mix is great. With online, if the schools are allowing it, then you can record each other this way. Otherwise, there are in the handbook how to do a Zoom recording with both of them and make that work as well. POI is a new event. It's only been in the NSDA for, I think, 3 years now, possibly 4. However, it comes from an event in California called thematic interpretation. Basically, you're taking a theme or an idea, something you want to have addressed, sort of like an oratory of some kind, and you're finding texts multiple texts and multiple genres of text to put around it, and talk about that theme in a way with multiple texts and interpretations of that way. So with that, I think the biggest thing that you can do is, and the most important thing is to read a variety of things. Your kids, to prep for these types of things and to get an idea for things, is have them read plays, have them watch plays, have them read novels, have them watch movies, have them read biographies and articles and poems and songs, and listen to songs and stories and read the news. Everything that they can think of, just reading. And they don't even have to have a theme. In fact, I almost recommend, especially if they don't know what, is to read a lot of things and find common things between a text and find a common theme between them all that they can talk about and use, that they're seeing coming from the text. Sort of like a debate round or a debate case. Instead of finding possible contentions first and then finding the evidence to match it, instead researching and finding and letting the research inform the contentions. The same thing happens with POI. And I think even for interps and stuff like this, read a lot of things. Don't go with what's already out there. Don't look at the past nationals list and go, I'm going to pick these things, because that may not fit them. They need to read, they need to discover what works for them. And this, any other ideas or thoughts that people have on preparation and how to expand the library and things like this from those who have done interps before?
Yeah, I have a suggestion. If you're wealthy,
If you want to, you can just speak up, or there's a little hand raise button too if you want. I can see those too.
Tanya, can you
You
hear
can
me?
also go in the chat and share things as well in the chat if you don't feel like talking and doing too. All right, pick a topic you enjoy and you care about. Here is the biggest
Hey,
thing I think
Tanya?
for a lot of any speech event is kids
Tanya?
are just picking things they think they have to talk about or things that they think they need to know. If they don't care about it, or it's not something they enjoy or are wanting to do, they're not going to do well at it. Yes, Nick.
Someone was talking a second ago, and I don't think you could hear
I
her.
can't hear you, Nick.
Trying again. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can't hear anyone. That's great. Okay. Let's see. Anyone? Nick, are you there still? Trying.
Can you hear me? I'm
I can hear
talking.
you now. Yay. All right.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you all now. I don't know what happened with my computer.
Okay, yeah, she was just trying to talk, and then you like kept talking like you didn't hear her. So
Good.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick.
Jennifer, talk. Jennifer, please share. I told you Jennifer's my interp goddess. So
Yeah, no, but okay. So like if your organization can fundraise and you have the money, a website that I really like is I think it's like the number 4NX Fanatics. They have a Facebook group that you can join as a coach, even if you don't buy the rest of the stuff. But it has an entire library of all of these events. And at the bottom of each cutting that's already been made, it tells you like if that particular interp has been to nationals before, or if it is qualified in other state championships, which is really cool. Even if your kids don't use any of the pieces, but use it to learn like length of a cutting and how the cuttings look, and see what kinds of other stuff's been done and is out there. But I like that one. Yeah, give me a second and I'll put it up in the chat.
yeah, that's a good one that I've seen things from as well. I like the idea of using things from there too, and having them read through them as well. Try them out in class, have them do reader's theater with them and stuff like this, and see what they can come up with. Those are also great ways to see what's already been done and cut. Absolutely. The problem with some of those is that everyone does them all the time. And so if you want something original, I mean, I don't say don't do them. If they like something, they find something and they'll do well at it, choose it by all means. But I like reading them and showing kids what's possible, but sometimes you see the same things at Nat Quals every year. I judged the same piece by 3 different people, 2 in the same round at nationals one year. So finding new things and stuff, but having them pick a topic and things that they enjoy and care about. It doesn't have to be a social justice issue. It doesn't have to be, something that is vital to anything. It can be just something they care about. It can be just something they enjoy. It just can be a story they like to tell. It can be something that's social justice. It can be something that they want to make a difference in the world. Both work and both are okay. And they don't have to. I know that at nationals, a lot of the things that have been being seen are these big social justice-y and message and change the world things, but they don't have to be. And if they try to do something that's not going to work just to try it, and do it because they think they have to, is not going to be effective for them as a competitor. So I say, pick something topic you enjoy, care about, whether it's going to do well or not, even if it is a social justice one, but it might be controversial and people are going to maybe vote it down. At least you're getting the voice out there and it's okay. Just warn your kids and tell them to be okay with losing and to just try things and be themselves. And that's the most important thing, especially when it comes to interps, because interps are very subjective in a lot of ways. As to what people like and what they're comfortable with, especially as judges. So, yeah. Anything else on that, Jennifer, or anyone else that has a thought on that?
I just have a question more for you and Jennifer. In talking about, in like sourcing, a lot of my kids get excited about more current things that they have seen on television or seen in film. And a lot of times it's really hard to get a script for that because you have to, because of the rules as to like it has to be published or it has to be a book. Like you can't use like the movie script version. Like I had somebody do The Help last year and we had to do it from the book and not from the movie version. Like, is there any kind of like if I buy a script of an episode of a TV show, is that considered a published work? Like,
If it
that's
is,
my question.
if you can buy the script as like a book form or as a PDF thing, then I would just, usually that's okay. Because if you can buy it as a script form, like I can buy a libretto of a play. I can buy the movie screenplay for a couple of movies. And if I have a published hard copy of that, then yeah, that's okay. If it's an online,
An ISBN number, you can use it.
if it has
And
an
by
ISBN,
the way,
That's the rule right there. It needs to have an ISBN.
it asks for it all the time.
or it comes from approved list of sites. And here's the thing. So they have this long list of approved sites. And if you find something that you think would be good and if it kind of adheres to their rules, you can actually submit sites and things to them for approval or not approval.
Nick,
So try it.
Yeah,
Nick?
go ahead, Jonathan.
I had a kid last year do Napoleon Dynamite, and he went through and found it. He submitted it. They approved it, and he qualified for nationals off of.
Okay, because I had a girl who wanted to do like the HBO show Euphoria. And
So yeah. So
we had trouble tracking down a script, so I told her she couldn't.
yeah, no.
Well, that was the hard thing is you have to. I told the kid that wanted to do Napoleon. He did it really well. He did it all about friends and high school drama that goes on. And he did. It was really, really good, and he qualified for nationals off of it. We had a couple kids say, "Hey, that's not an okay thing." And I'm like, "Nope, here's the ISBN. He's found it. He has it all put together. Cool. It is completely okay." And a couple people, but we're like, "Nope, it met qualifications." But so if you can do a Napoleon Dynamite, you just have to look hard enough to find it. They're out there. You just have to.
I like the ISBN concept because that gives me some direction to my students to give them a little more parameters, because I think that kind of the list of parameters, while they're pretty specific, are also pretty broad. So I think telling them that they have to find something that way.
The other thing is to be careful because some things will be on self-published sites and they can get an ISBN from a self-published site. And unless that is approved, you'll want to check that. So like we had a couple of kids a couple of years ago who wrote their own piece, got it self-published, an ISBN and everything. And so we didn't notice until they said something about, hey, yeah, we wrote this to someone in passing, and we had to look it up. And the rules are that, it has to be published by an appropriate site as well. So a self-published.
So if I can buy it on Amazon, does that not count? Because I happen to be a publisher and have 10 ISBN numbers available. True statement. I published my own book last summer. So.
Yeah. So that would be probably accurate because it's through a source, but these self-published sites that are up all over the place, like Wattpad and things like this, are not approved. So you have
I know it gave Kindle as an option. Like I gave a Kindle book as an option last year when I was looking at like the list of approved like sources.
You're probably safe through Amazon and the big places like this, but if it's a sketchy site that's self-publishing and things like this, I would check it out on the approved site or get it approved. Good questions and great help. Thank you, Jonathan and Jennifer.
Tanya, the only other thing I would say about the Interps with it too is have the kids pick something they're passionate about and then research stuff on it. Because once they find something they're passionate about, whatever that is, and like the kid who did Napoleon, he was all about friends, and he has a brother who was autistic and wasn't making friends, and so that's what he was passionate about. I'm like, well, then make it work talking about friends. So when he did his cuttings, he did different things in different scenes from Napoleon and making friends and being bullied and all of those different things. And that's what really sold a lot of it, was how he put it together around his passion. And that's the best thing for an interp, is something that a kid really cares about. If he doesn't care about it and he's just doing it because he has to do an interp, they suck.
Exactly. picking that topic you enjoy and care about is, I think, the most important thing. You know, you can assign a kid a thing all day long, but if they don't enjoy it, they're not going to do it. Jennifer, if you'll keep track of the chat, and if there's questions that you can answer, or other people, you guys can answer each other's chats and share in there. But if there's something that needs to be addressed to me, make sure I know, because I don't have the chat up on my share screen. All right. So before cutting, we've kind of already gone over this already, so great. Check the NSDA approved website for online sources. And make sure that it's going to be okay. If you have a question, please feel free to ask. I can always find out too, or ask the NSDA. They're always good about that. A big word about POI is that you want to have like a base central text, something that's kind of the core of it all, and then finding other supplemental texts that can go with it is a really good idea about POI. And then a POI, centering it around a theme, centralizing it around a story, a character, or a message, can help to narrow that. So as kids are reading different things, if they find, like my daughter, she had a theme of wanting to come together, and she really, really loves the musical Come From Away. So that was her central text, and she wanted to talk about how we come together and we find positives and we do good things even out of tragedy. And so then she found supplemental texts to go with that base text. And so helping your kids find a theme, a story, a character, message that they care about, and then finding that base text. Or if their kids really, really super love like a cartoon comic book that, you know, whatever it is, or a graphic novel, and they wanted that to be the basic text, that's fine. Then find the other things that go around it, and that works. But having a base text to go with it, rather than just trying to hodgepodge a bunch of puzzle pieces, has helped my kids a lot with Interps, especially POA. So the art of cutting. If you're not finding a pre-done piece, and even if they do a pre-done piece, I would have the kids find the original play, the original book that it comes from, and have them read the whole thing, so they understand the whole context of it, rather than just what they're seeing there, because what they're getting is not the whole character development, the whole arc of everything that's going on, to understand where it's coming from. So I really, really recommend that they do that. Yes, Jennifer. You're muted.
Yep, sorry, here you go.
You're good.
And, I had a couple of girls a couple of years ago who saw somewhere a piece, and so they were like, okay, but we're going to make sure we read the book first. And when they read the book, they realized that the other people that they had saw performing the piece were not being true to the intent and content of the book at all, and had cut it inappropriately. So going back to the original source is really, really key.
It's really important, I think. And I do this with my kids who are doing scenes in theater and stuff too. It's like, yeah, you've picked a scene offline. That's great. But do you understand the whole story? Yeah. So I make them do that too. So the art of cutting, it is an art. It is not always easy to do, but it's worth it. The first thing I say is, what's the storyline? What's the arc of the story you want to tell? This goes for POI. This goes for whatever it is. So what is the arc that you want to tell? Every book, every novel, every story's got the side conversations, the side stories. I mean, even in Twilight, you have, the side friendships, the backstories of different people. You've got all these different things. Which is the story you want to tell? And go through what is that basic plot line. What is it that you must absolutely have to tell the story and to get it across? So my daughter did God is in the Pancakes a couple years ago. And so she read this book and she's like, okay, but there's all these great things in between. There's all these things. I'm like, but what's the base story? What is it you want to tell? Is it this story? Is it this story? What's the message you want to get? And what parts do you need from these parts you do? So I take it back to English or whatever you want to talk about. And, what's the arc of the story that you want to tell and how you want to do it? Even in POI, how do you want it to build? How do you want it to begin, climax, the biggest part, and to resolve? So looking at it, the exposition, usually after that, you've got your intro. How are you going to build up with it? The biggest part, the most, biggest part, the climax of the piece, then your falling action, denouement. And then these are not equal. I hate that this is equal. I always say rising action is huge and climax comes about here, and then the falling action is like really short. But however they want to do it. But I have it after they've read the piece, or if they've got a cut piece already, I say, what's the storyline? I have them literally break out, what's the storyline? What's the purpose? Where are you going with this and why? And I think that that's the most important question I have my students ask themselves at the end of each piece and end of each thing is, why is this important? Why is it necessary? Because there might be really fun pieces, like my daughter last year who was wanting to do Chicago. She's like, but I really want to do this piece. I'm like, does it have a purpose? Does it have something that is going to help either tell the story, tell about the character, help with your, you know, adding in something for levels? What is the purpose of it? And if it doesn't have a purpose, as fun as it might be, it probably isn't necessary and probably should be out, because it'll be distracting, it'll be in the way. And often when you get performing it, you'll find that it's awkward and it just doesn't work. And she found that out and we had to rework her piece because of that. So having the kids, again, if it's the piece that they're doing, if it's a play, if it's a book, whatever it might be, having them do this. If it is a POI, I want them to draw out what their story is that they're trying to tell, and then what pieces from which texts are going to tell what part, and how they're going to tell that story with those different pieces. So they can make this a big puzzle piece, putting those things in together. And that's how I approach cutting a piece. Jennifer, any thoughts on yours from cutting as well, or anyone else out there in the world?
So my girls took a video, saw something on video, and then went and tried to figure out how it was cut. And it was the craziest, like one sentence in chapter 1 and then skip to chapter 10 and pick 2 sentences from there and then back to chapter 3 and a sentence from there. So necessarily, again, it's like writing your own story. You don't necessarily have to look for like paragraphs from the texts that you're wanting to use. You just need to find a way to use the author's words to tell your story, which might be really, really messed up when it comes right down to the end.
It might be. And I think that one of the things that's in the rules is that they want you to keep as much, I mean, even though it's an interpretation, there should be intent and purpose with it as well, and keeping some truth to the author as well. But that's me. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts or anyone on cutting that's done it before, or questions you have about cutting?
I tell the kids when they do it is, okay, you have 4 minutes to tell me the entire story of the book. And they're like, well, I can't do that fast. I'm like, well, that's what you're when I give them an interp assignment, I say, okay, you have 4 minutes. You have to tell me the entire story in 4 minutes. Because when they do that, then they cut it down to the main, very important things. Then all of a sudden they start like, well, this isn't really that important. Because you can always add stuff back in, but then you've got the key. This is what is the most important stuff in the story of what it needs to be. And I asked them too, is like, all right, did you get across what you wanted to say? And they're like, no, I didn't. I'm like, okay, well, how do you get that in there? And that makes it hard. It's really hard for them to cut. And I use the example of like movies where you get movies like Lord of the Rings that if you take out all the deleted scenes, it's like 18 hours long instead of like just 3 hours. And I'm like, they can't put it all in there. So why did they cut this scene out? Why is this one in and this one's not? And that starts making the kids think of like a movie director, how directors are cutting things out of movies. And that helps them really start to understand different things too. So that's what I do, if that helps at all.
I like that. It's very cool. Any other thoughts? This can be the hardest part, but I think for me, I like the puzzles. I like the crafting of it because I'm creating something. And if you get the kids excited about the ability to create something through it and stuff like this, it can be very fun, I think. Mary, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I agree about the pauses. There's so much you can do non-verbally. So you say to the student, show us what you envision in your mind. You've got these few words, but you can do a whole lot non-verbally with that. It doesn't have to all be talking. You can do, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And have a blast with it.
And leaving time for that too, making sure your cutting isn't 10 minutes long, but leaving time for that movement, leaving time for those things in between as well is good. Ryan, did you have a question or a thought?
Yeah, are there formal rules about how long an excerpt has to be from a certain text, or even if it's like a poem or something where there's not a syntactical structure or anything like that?
In Interps, and dramatic and humorous and duo, they come from the same text, and so you can cut however you want from the same text. It doesn't have to be so much from one scene or whatever. In POI, as long as you're coming and taking a piece from at least 3 different genres of texts, you can take one sentence from one text and have the rest be from 2, or you can have 10. That's completely up to you on that, as long as they're cited correctly and done correctly within the format, for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Great questions and great help. Thank you guys. I appreciate those. I'm going to use the movie thing now, Jonathan. That was an awesome way. I teach film studies and I've never thought of doing it that way before. So cool. So building a character and your stories. Before I have the kids ever acted out, once they've got their script, and this is a part of revising their script. So just like everyone's revising their cases and revising their speeches, they're revising their interps after they've cut them and built them, just like they're building a case. So my interp kids and people don't get out of doing anything that everyone else gets with things. Building a story and character. So distinct characters, knowing who the characters, what their emotional arc is, what's their personality, how are they, do they have are they coming from a certain country or a certain dialect, a certain place? What is their background as far as a story? Are they an only child? I basically do a script analysis on this a lot, is because if they understand their characters, when they go to play them, they will be more honest and truthful. Often we find in humorous interpretation, especially, they're played as stereotypes and very caricatured. But the ones who do the best are more honest and real. Even if they're funny and exaggerated, they're still real, and they're still real people versus caricatures or stereotypes of people, which I think is an important distinction, especially in today's world where we want to avoid the problems of offending people or taking and stealing and, or inappropriately portraying someone. You want to be as honest to the characters as possible and do them appropriately. What's the emotional arc of the entire piece? Where do you want them to start? Where do you want them to go within the piece? And where do you want them to end? If you can map that out on your story about the emotional things and levels you want them to go with, that will help you to craft what pieces go where as well, or revise what pieces go where, or how they portray them. What are the characters' arc? What is the story of the character? How are they growing from here to here? Even in a humorous piece, there is an arc to that character, whether it's a fall, whether it's a, that they don't grow, that they don't go, they're going from A to B. Even in Horton Hears a Who, Horton grows from being a person who's sitting on a tree to now having a child, and the experience that he's gone through about still being optimistic, even though he's been hurt and sold off. I mean, there's a thing that this character has gone through in there that helps inform how that character is played. To break things into smaller scenes within scenes. So each of those parts of the story arc, I will divide up like a play into a scene, and then mini scenes within that. Where does it change within this? Where does the idea change? Where, I will literally break it down so far as to like, what's this sentence really feeling? What's this character going through? Especially when you're playing multiple characters, so that you more cleanly go between them, understanding them and those things. It'll also help create levels. Just like listening to a monotone speech, you want to have, that a monotone scene with the character played the same the entire time at the same volume is not enjoyable. I mean, we've all watched those movies that do that, right? It's there's no fun in this. So you want to have levels. You want to have humor and seriousness. You want to have loud and soft. You want to have, silly, but there's all sorts. And of course, if it's a dramatic, you want to have more on one end and humorous more on the other end. But where do those levels come in so that it keeps it interesting and engaging to your audience and helps to be honest with what's going on in the scene as well. Honesty, and respect. Those are 2 things that I hit a lot. Honesty in the way that you play characters, in the way that you tell the story, is important to me in that it's not going to disparage another group or person or individual or that story. You're not treating it lightly in any way. Even a humorous story if you do it in a way that's disrespectful, can disparage that author and that story and that event, even if it's fictional, right? And especially playing different characters, being respectful of those characters and who you are, and making sure, you know, that we're not going to, I'll just be straight out, that we're not going to, you know, the white person playing a black accent, right? Don't do it in a, if you have to do it because the character is absolutely necessary to the story, do it respectful. You know, if don't do it in a way that is going to be offensive or disrespectful to anyone who is of color. You know, if you're going to play a Mexican accent, don't do it in a respectful way, because, and only do those if that character absolutely has to be that. Don't choose it because you're going to think it's going to be funny and play to the joke, right? Because that reinforces stereotypes, that reinforces the aggressions that can happen within rounds and within the community, and perpetuates those things. So unless it's a Hispanic character, unless it's a black character, you know, you don't need to choose those just to be a gimmick, if that makes sense. Yes, Jennifer. You're muted again, my love.
There we go. I would add to this that you need to have the conversation with your students about what kinds of things they're going to be seeing, because one of my girls 2 years ago was doing a piece about rape and suicide, which is kind of common in POI and DI, and triggered another student in the round so emotionally that the other student dropped out of the tournament. And they have to be prepared to go in to know your piece might not be about that, but other people in the rounds might be, and they gotta kind of know it's coming.
Right. And I would also recommend that when you are doing a piece, or if your student is choosing a piece about those things, to treat it in a way that's respectful. And at the beginning say, hey, my piece is going to deal with these things. If you're someone who might have past experience or have a problem with that, give them an opportunity to leave the room if it's going to trigger them that badly, you know. But also teach your kids how to do it in a respectful way. If you're going to be talking about, you know, systematic racism and police brutality in your piece, that's fine, but can you do it in a way that's going to be respectful to your audience and in a way to teach them rather than push them away from the conversation? Can you do it in a way that's going to show them, but without hurting, you know, them being inside the conversation in a way, or are you going to turn them away? It was a great piece, and I wish that if they had just acted it in a differently at nationals a couple years ago. Literally, her piece was literally yelling and at the judge about how horrible they were, you know, in the words. Basically, it came off as that they were attacking the judge and attacking, even though they don't know about me and stuff like that. But I think there was a way they could have done the same piece, but not done it in that way. So I think you can do the same things, but how you approach it and teaching the kids to approach it in a respectful manner in order to teach and share without pushing people away, I think is an important aspect as well. And that can be done in this aspect here, is like, what are you going to do and why are you going to do it? All right.
Oh, can I ask one more question on that
Yes,
point?
Ryan, yes.
So I'm assuming they have guidelines for like the sorts of content that's off limits, language, you know, or whatever. Or is that kind of open?
So yeah, the NSDA says that it should be school appropriate, and that it should be within, you know, that it should be to high school age appropriate, content wise and verbiage wise. What that means to different people in different school districts can be very different sometimes. And so I think the only time I've really had a problem with a piece was at Shakespeare Festival last year, when they were like literally you know, almost showing a rape scene, you know. It's like, so I think that, and we complained about that and did that. So I think I would look to teaching the kids about how to do things, unless the language is absolutely necessary to the character or the story, leave it out. This is the greatest thing. In theater, we can't cut these things out, but in debate, we can. If there is a part where it's like explicitly going into detail into a scene, it's not necessary. Talk around it. There is a point where you could go out into narration and show something if you absolutely have to have that in there to tell the story. but controversial topics and things like this are definitely par for the events. And they're a great way for kids to deal with them and talk about them in a safe place. But it's up to us, I think, as coaches to help them to do so in a positive way and in a correct manner.
We had a kid, Tanya, a couple of years ago. I had a duo who did Wolf of Wall Street, and it was really, really good. But I told them going into this, remember, you are in Utah, very conservative, and they didn't cuss once, but just because it was the title Wolf of Wall Street, I told them there are going to be judges that are you are not going to win just because of what the title of this is. So they were okay with it. They tried it. They took second at NAC quals, but they didn't qualify because of the title. And one of the judges actually put that right on the ballot, which was tough. And it was really, really good. And it was a tough thing for them to learn. But they can always work around it. But I always tell my kids, just understand you are in Utah. You have a very conservative thing. You have to have a piece that is going to be applicable to that very conservative mom, to somebody who's completely not conservative in any way at all. So you got to play your judge, because.
And that's a hard thing with interps because they're so prepared, right?
Right.
To know your audience. So knowing your audience, but if you want to tell that story and you want to do it, then just be prepared to take whatever it goes. And we're doing a better job, and we're working on educating, judges, but there's still going to be, there's nothing we can do about some things, but just knowing that will come in. And nationals, it happens too. There's a very conservative and there's very liberal, and there's all the things in between. When you get to nationals, you've got the judges who are very lay, and then you've got very experienced judges. You've got a wide mixture. And so the NSDA has gone to training, and part of the training that we are asking you to do with your judges is part of that through the NSDA, that they actually have a cultural sensitivity and training on content, not judging content, but the skills. And so we're getting better, and hopefully that we will continue to get better throughout time, but it's a real issue. All right, performance. These are the things that as they go through is important to note, because these are the skills that actually will be judged, right? Yes, the story needs to make sense, all of those things, and the message and stuff like this, but the things that they're actually being really judged on are their skills in presenting that information as well. So inflection, I literally use music markings in my scripts with my kids. I'm like, okay, circle, your T's, and what, go through and find a marking system for consonants, and where's the inflection? Where am I going to vary things? I will circle words and put out things. I'm going to have this emotion on this sentence. Have them break and take and write down on their script all these things that are going on. Pace. Am I going to go faster or slower? At certain points. What's my volume? Especially in DI or serious things, the tendency is to yell and get louder when we're more intense. But a more powerful technique might be, at a certain point, to get quieter. There's nothing more impactful than a mom's glare of silence when you've done something wrong, right? So what is the impact that they want? Have them think through that impact, and how can they use volume and pace and articulation and inflection to create that emotional arc that they've just gone through, right? You've got the character arc, you've got the emotional arc, you've got the scenes. How can they use these things to do this? If you're creating different voices, you don't have to do different accents, but what they do want to do is have a clear, distinct, different voice, whether it's lower or higher, whether it talks at a faster pace, or whether it's more deliberate and they talk with a little bit of a lilt or pauses. What are things they can do to create that character vocally in those things as well? And then there's physicalization. This goes to my theater training and things like this with things, in that there's physical presentations of body. Are they a round character? Are they slouching? Are they a straight and strict character? How do they hold themselves? Having your kids experiment with their characters and knowing that character's arc, maybe they change physically throughout it to show that change in arc. As the kids are creating those characters and practicing them, they should be practicing, how do they hold themselves? How do they move? How do their hands gesture? What are their facial expressions? Do they have a glare all the time? Or do they, what is it that their mouth moves like? And these are all very minute things, but when we look at different people and we watch other people, everyone has their unique way of moving and their own way of presenting themselves. And so having them observe people and observe those things and then practice doing those with those characters can be very, I mean, not even talking, but just moving as that character for a time and trying to find that space that they embody within that. Then there's what we call popping. There are two ways of thought within the Interps world. Humorous uses more of the pop versus a melting. I call it a melting transition between characters. But popping is where you like quickly pop from between one thing and another. And you even might have your feet at certain, you know, this character has their feet forward, this person has them out this way, this person has them this way, and they just literally pop between, and their feet can just literally pop as they change physicalization. Popping between and having them practice, if it is humorous, what's this person's shape and their things to this, and how do they move quickly just between the two with that. There is some popping in dramatic, depending on how, what's that duo, it depends on if they're doing their style as partners, how they do it, but they tend to more meld into things because it's more one character. They might transition slowly from like, here's this person talking, and they grow into this other person as they do it and just kind of melt that transition through. Kind of like a fade in, you know, a PowerPoint or something like that. So transitions, and again, like everything else that I do with all of these, why am I doing it? What purpose does it serve? And how does it help tell the story? How does it help create the character? How does it help get the message across? Because if it doesn't do it, re-examine it and make sure it works. Directionality, if you've got two people talking to each other and this person's facing this way and this person's facing this way, keep that character the same way every time. So making sure your kids are aware of where they were looking and where they're facing and keeping that character in that. It helps the judge know which character is talking and where they are as well, especially as the kids are beginning. And then there's the intro. Stepping out into an intro and becoming themselves can be a very difficult thing for some kids because they're like in this character and they don't. So finding and being comfortable with themselves and what that intro character is, or creating a character for that intro as they do that, can be very vital as well. The intro itself should be about 2 or 3 sentences long. It can be silly, it can have its own ADD type of hook. I had one student who liked to step out of her DI and go, "Have you ever found a horse in your bed?" And we're like, "What the heck?" You know, and then she'd do something silly and then she'd go, "And this is a real problem in our world, and this is this," and she'd go back into her DI and introduce her DI through it. But, you know, it's its own little speech telling about, you know, what the piece is going to be about. Maybe there's a theme or a message that they do want them to see through it. It should also include all of the top texts that you're using, especially if it's POI. This by this person, this by this person, this by this person, this by, you know, it should list out all the texts in some way. But finding their own voice as it and how to engage the audience in the intro is also an important thing. How they stand, how they step out, and how they step back into their piece. Any other thoughts on this from anyone or questions? All right, we got about 15 minutes, so here we go. I think this is almost the end here. Rehearsals, memorization, and the POI book. So I always like going through all those steps, just like their assignments. It's like their rough draft, it's their research, just like every other assignment for my debaters or anything. They're having to do their research assignments. They're they're cutting their cards. They're creating their case by creating their story and their arc. They're revising through their script analysis and things like this. Everyone has something to do in my classes. So script analysis, practicing out loud is one of the best memorization techniques you can do. Also practicing with movement. If they're practicing their words with the movement, they're more likely to remember the words with that movement and making it tactile and kinesthetic. Practicing out loud helps them to hear themselves. The other thing is to record themselves and listen to them. Kids memorize a song after the first time of hearing it. They go watch a movie, they come home and reenact half of it. They've only watched it once, but yet how they've memorized it, right? So there's something about oral that really, really works. Writing it out can help with memorization. But the biggest thing is to practice, practice, practice. If you can get a mirror, cheap mirrors for like $5 at Walmart and put it up in your room, or, you know, in a practice room around the hallway or something like this, or the kids go in and practice in front of a mirror, making faces and watching their face do things. I think the biggest thing the kids can do is to practice in front. And I do what's called a silent practice, where they don't say a word at all, but they go through their speech, just physicalizing everything. They're running it in their head, but they're just doing the physical aspects. They're just changing the characters physically and things, and watching how that does and how it's telling the story, and is it doing what it's supposed to, and doing that. And I'll workshop with them on those things and say, okay, let's stop. My workshops with them may not get through the entire piece, but what I do with 2 minutes of that piece, they can then apply to the rest of their piece, and then come back and show me, and I can do that. And then record and watch themselves over and over. Especially, we talked about this with the online ones, but especially with being online, they want to be able to see how they look, and what, and if they're going to record it as an asynchronous, great. They need to be able to record it in one take. So practicing that. And then also, if they're going to be doing it live, depending on if the tournament does it live, how do I look in the mirror, and how do I do that? Not in the mirror, in the camera on screen, and how do I do this and keep it in frame and do that? So other techniques for memorizing or practicing and things like that.
Oh, I forgot, you can't see the chat. So Tanya, how do you organize your class periods so that you have your time to do your workshop, individual, your IEs versus debate, all that kind of stuff?
So usually, like the first part of the class, I will do skill training. Like if there's something that I want them to all learn all together, it could be researching, it could be citing sources, it could be arranging an argument, whatever it is. And then often I will have my students break out, it's project-based work, and have them work with their partners, work with their pieces, working on their homework. And I'm going around monitoring, or I might pull all of the PF people over and talk with them about their topic analysis and talk about their ideas and where they're going and give suggestions, then they go back. And then, so I'll do some group work that way. And same thing with Interps. I'll sometimes put on the board, like, okay, workshops today, sign up who wants to go, and then I'll call them up and we'll do them. Lab times, the same thing. With this new environment, I'm probably going to flip my lessons a little bit, in the fact that I'm probably going to have them watch the lectures on the skill-based things on their own at home, and then in class time will be time to work and time to get help and time to run practice rounds, time to workshop and do those things. And so I will usually do 2 or 3 workshops a day with interpreters and things like this when it's time for that. Block schedule 2 days a week. 1 week I'll do, 1 day's speech day, 1 day's debate day. The 3-day week we'll do like whole group conversation and current events, and then they're working on things, and then a speech day and a debate day. It depends on what you've got. If you've got advanced kids and novices, you can also have the advanced kids go work, and you can work with novices, or have the advanced kids pairing and mentoring them. If you've got an all novice class, just going through as a unit together, everyone's doing oratory. Okay, here's oratories, here's some skill-based stuff, everyone's writing, I'm going around working with them on writing, and then they're workshopping with me when they're ready. I'm pulling them up one at a time, or they're signing up. It just depends on, I've done all of those formats over 14 years, depending on my classes. All right, and that is the end of my thing. So this is opening up to questions and discussion and sharing and things like that. So thoughts and ideas or anything from anyone?
Tanya, so the very beginning of the school year, when you're getting kids into their events, how do you try to, or do you try to make it even with the different events?
I don't care.
You let them have just whatever they want to do, and they could switch at any time. So you require 1 debate and 1 IE?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my classes, I have them learn a debate and a speech event, because I believe the skills cross over. And I want them to learn both skills so that they can use both skills as they need to. If I'm in a novice class, we're doing a unit at a time. and do that, and then break out, and then they can pick events and work on those. It just depends, but yeah, I have them pick their own and let them do, because if I force them into, now if they don't know or we see they're not doing well, I might suggest different ways to go and help to guide them. But I have yet to have the team where I have to assign people until region or state, and I'm like, here's sacrificial lamb, Jennifer, and then Nick.
I philosophically believe the same thing she does in terms of everybody does both, and I let them do whatever they want until January. And in January, I'm like, by now you need to have shown me what you're good at, and from here on out, I'm planning what my slate's going to be for the rest of the year, and you might not have a choice.
Exactly. Yeah, January, they should have picked their events by then, and they're working on region state. I mean, they may still switch, but they have to have a good reason for me at that point. Nick, and then I think Doug. Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of, I guess, sit on this decision.
That's okay.
I don't really think that, like, I think that we have such limited time between in class and practice that if I have kids who are really excited about debate and I force them to do a speech event, they generally just get resentful and bitter, and vice versa. No, my oratory kids don't want to do PF, they don't want to do policy, they don't want to do LD, and I've kind of had the opposite experience. And I think that kind of asking them to tell them you have to do a debate event, you have to do a speech event, kind of makes them even more resentful of the other side when I'm trying to build a bridge between speech and debate and show that both things are valuable. You know what I mean? But there's a place for everybody in the activity. I don't know. I've had a different experience, I guess.
I don't make them compete in it. I just make them learn and kind of do it in class so that they can kind of get a feel for it. But yeah, I don't make them compete in it. But you're right, that can do that. And if you see that happening, maybe readjust and think, absolutely.
I think it depends. I think it depends on how big your school is too. Because as a 1A school, I now just became, I don't have a choice if I want to compete. They have to do both.
That makes sense.
Right? But if I was, at a bigger school, yeah, my state champion, duo kids, that was all they did. And,
yeah.
So.
It's weird because like I'm at a bigger school, but I'm still in a rebuilding phase as far as like number of competitors. So it's like I'm in a weird spot. So.
Yeah. Doug, you had thoughts? Because you've been around a while with me.
Yeah, I kind of, we lay out what all the events are. We have the captains kind of make a pitch and they kind of sell it to them, and I go over some basic debate stuff. And then I have them list the events they want to be in, and I have them list their top 3. But then as a coach, now I've got a bigger team, but I do try to even it out to make sure that I've got enough working on an event that we can be competitive. And so, if I've got 10 kids that want to do LD and only one that wants to do PF, I have to adjust that a little bit. And so, but I'm kind of like Nick too. Like I have them specialize in an event, and they have to at least compete in it once, and sometimes twice, depending on the event. And then they can change if they want, and there's certain tournaments that we let them do fun things. Like the tournament I host, we have a million different events. If they want to try something different, no big deal. Right, Moab, and this isn't to downplay that one, but that's kind of a fun tournament for us. And so we'll go down to Moab, and some kids will compete in their main events, and others will try something different at that tournament, But so kind of the idea is that you're trying to train them in a lot of different events, but at the same time, there's this competitive portion of debate that we look at as well too, and like Jennifer said, when it comes to January time, like we pretty much have to lock down what our kids are going to do, or make them start competing for spots if I have more than one. And last year I had 10 kids in LD, and some of them could see the writing on the wall that they couldn't compete, and so they then tried to switch and pick up some other events. But there are a few events, though, like oratory. Once the oratory is written, they can tweak it a little bit, but they don't have a lot to do. So I usually make them do more than one event. Some of the speech kids, Congress, I try to get them to do extemp as well. But it depends on your team size.
I think it depends on your team size. I think it depends on your circumstances, knowing your kids and things like that. And your own style, because I'm a very different style teacher than anyone else is, and so knowing your style, what you do, what works for me won't work for someone else sometimes. I can give you ideas and things like this, but discovering for yourself what works and what isn't is going to be I think.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that. So there's a lot of names on here that I don't recognize, a lot that I do recognize, but your style is very important. So you can go and listen to what I do or what Nick does or what Tanya does and some people that have a lot of experience, but you've got to figure out what works for you. And I remember the first 2 or 3 years in debate, all the coaches would be together and they'd be all entering ballots into tab room. It was a great time that I got to listen to what other coaches did. I got to ask questions about what other coaches did. And I slowly pieced together something that worked for me, because you're not anyone but you. And so you have to figure out what works for you. Listen to the other coaches, pick their brains. You should always be asking questions, but it's got to work for you. Like, just figure out what works for you and make it fit your personality.
And try and fail is great. I've done
Yes.
plenty of that over the years.
And if you're a new debate coach and you've never done debate before, which was the situation I was in, it's okay to tell your kids, I don't know, let's figure it out. Like, that was probably the most powerful learning moments that I've seen. And when I see new debate coaches struggle, it's when they have to be the end all be all of all knowledge. And sometimes it's this pride thing, like we can't look dumb in front of our students, but it's okay to say, you know what, there's a lot of different events. I don't know how to do this. Let's figure it out.
Exactly. Yes, Nick.
Just real quick, on kind of what Doug was saying, now that the rule has changed and you can have an inter-squad practice, reach out to coaches who you know are strong in Congress, who you know are strong in policy, and connect with each other and do things like, in a virtual world, we can have a policy practice round with Doug's team could have a practice round against my team, or the team from Moab, or whoever who are maybe more geographically distant now will have access to resources that they may not have had access to in the past, which is kind of the philosophy behind why I wanted the rules changed. But use it.
And debating with other teams is really good, because if you only debate with your own team, they're used to like that specific style. And so that's the benefit of going to tournaments and having inter-squad debates, is because you pick up different styles and different things that, Nick's going to teach things that I don't, because he's much better at policy than I am. But